Hi, everybody. This is Cheryl Abram, Person-Centered Cyber. So I am here today to share with you all information that I got from a video that I watched the other day. I have the link here for you all to see the full interview. Now, the interview was 3 hours, okay? I didn't watch the full thing, but they have timestamps. They're wonderful. So I went to some of the timestamps. I just wanted to share with you what I thought about it. So it's on the Hated Ones channel, okay? And I have the link for you all to see. It's called Interview with a Real Hacker. There is no making it secure. He did the interview on May 23rd, okay, which was my son's birthday, the day we had crawfish. All right, so I'm gonna go over 7 things that let me turn this off. Can y'all hear that music? I'm going to go over 7 things that I wrote down that I thought were interesting that I wanted to comment on. And again, go to his website, his YouTube channel to see the whole 3-hour thing. It was very interesting, okay? So the first one, let me see here. I made some banners. So, okay. So this was an ethical hacker that he talked to. It sounded like he was in, I don't know, Ireland or something. He had an accent. So I'm assuming that's where it was. So the first thing he said was he developing his ethics as an ethical hacker. Okay, he said that he became interested in hacking by looking at Anonymous, and he thought, oh man, that's the stuff they're doing is very interesting, because they do it for political reasons and all that. So, that's how he started, and from there he started developing his ethical stance around hacking, because he said, I realized I can make just as much money doing this legally as I can illegally. And he didn't want to, jeopardize his life by doing some illegal behavior and, possibly getting arrested and all that. So he is an ethical hacker. And I really like this person, okay? Because they said a lot of stuff that I talk about on this channel, and it was just very interesting. So the second thing, the first was ethics that I took note of. The second thing he said was people would not use computers if they knew how vulnerable they really are, okay? Which was very interesting, okay? He said that, we see these smart homes, or even if it's not a totally smart home, our own homes, we have smart devices and stuff, and many of us have the Ring cameras and, all the goods, all those things. He be working in the field, being an ethical hacker, he said he ain't got none of that stuff. He said he barely uses his mobile device, okay? He said he pretty much has an old radio and a gun in his drawer, okay? Because he don't do all that technology because you're really opening yourself up to the world, when you use those kinds of things. I don't think I've ever heard an ethical hacker talk about it the way he has. He said it's not secure and there's no making it secure, which sounds kind of sad, but I'm just telling you what he said. It's not secure and there's no making it secure. Okay, so the third thing that I took note of, he said there is no incentive for security. And he was speaking about, businesses and companies, okay? And we know this, like those of us who work in the field, we know this. There's little focus on security, unless he said and even with this, so he said there's no focus on security unless you have a very strong regulatory requirement, okay? But I don't even think that's a focus on security. That's a focus on meeting regulations, okay? And he said, and I've heard this before, Professor Black Ops says this, he said it before, companies would rather pay the fine, than invest in cybersecurity. They'd rather pay the $50,000, or the, 100,000, 500,000, whatever. They'd rather do that than actually invest in security because it costs less to pay the fine. than it would to get security professionals in here and, doing all the things that they need to do. We already know that. Okay, we know that. So the next thing he said was, nobody's listening to security teams. Okay, and we know this too. Okay, this is not news. All right, we know this. Let me see some of the other stuff he said regarding that. And this is because he said security teams are trying to prove a negative. You're trying to say, because we're here, because we're doing the work we're doing, we prevented 10 hacks from occurring. Like, nobody knows that. Like, how do you know that? So it's hard to prove. It's hard to prove the value of a negative. Okay. And so he said nobody's listening to what security teams have to say. I agree with that. That is very true. However, insurance companies do it. Insurance companies are very successful with getting us, to pay, even where it's not a requirement, okay, like car insurance or something. We're happy to pay, in insurance companies for various things. They do it. How do they do it? Okay, how do they do it and get people to invest? That we need to look more into that. All right, and I'll look more into it, but I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, the next one, he said, security experts are frustrated. I know this is true too. Okay, so he mentioned that in the 80s and 90s, hackers love to explore, and that's what it was. It was exploration. It was not the 80s and 90s. Hacking was hacking. Like you're really trying to find out what something is. Your IT is building it, and you're breaking it apart. Hackers are breaking it and seeing what else they can do. What can I make this do? Is the question that they were asking. So there was not a lot of malice, or maliciousness behind the hacking. Okay, it was fun. He said, a lot of people love to break what others build. It's exciting. He said, and then. So that's what the training, you go to the training and you do the ranges and the blue and the red and all that, all those things that you do. You get your Kali Linux popping and all that. But then you get a job. Okay, he says. And you may have some amazing ideas, about what can be done on the network. And for the most part, they're not going to go anywhere, because unless you have the ability to convince the decision makers, that this is something that needs to be done, you're not going to go rogue up in an organization and just start putting shit on a network, start, placing controls here and changing the threat hunt there. You're not going to do all that. Okay. You have to get the buy-in of the business. So he said that's where people get disappointed, because you develop these skills and you go into organizations and they're tempered. It's like you go in on fire and they throw a cold bucket of water, on you. Now, this is in any industry. This is not just cybersecurity. Okay. Because especially, at least from my perspective, if you go into like a federal space with ideas, you could check your ideas at the door. Okay. So he said, security experts are frustrated because they get disappointed that they're really not able to do what they're learning how to do in these organizations. Because from what he mentioned before, organizations don't care. A lot of them doing stuff because they got to do it, because they have to do it. So what up now? Now this next one, child. He said government and nonprofit are like the worst as far as security is concerned. Now, that's true from what I experienced, I can say. One of the issues is what he already mentioned. They're really doing what they're doing because they have to do it, because regulations say they have to do it. Okay. If regulations did not say they don't have to do it, they probably wouldn't do it, especially government. Now, businesses will, okay? many businesses will, even if they're not told that they have to, they will do security because it's a business decision. Okay, if you got people coming in your organization, Visa, Capital One, and we're savvy enough, users are savvy enough to know that you need to have some kind of security in place. It's a business decision to get a cybersecurity team in here. Okay, and they see the bottom line. The CEOs, they see that. Okay, versus not having those securities on your system. Now that's businesses that make money and have a bottom line. Now, when it comes to government, that's you're talking about a horse of a different color. Okay, a horse of a different color, who get their money from Congress and appropriations and all that stuff. Okay, they're mainly, from my experience, doing it because OMB said they have to do it, or Congress said they have to do it. Somebody said, sister, somebody said you got to do this. Okay, and I know that for a fact because there are things that they could be doing that are not regulated that they don't do and don't care. Okay, they don't care. they don't. Unless it has something to do with us being 95 to 100% compliant, CISOs and government ain't trying to hear it for the most part. Okay, they're just not trying to hear it. So that's the first. Now the second one, as far as the government and nonprofit being the worst in security, and this I think goes beyond government and nonprofit, is, and I'm going to get to this more, and then the last one, okay, is it's so easy to become a cybersecurity professional, isn't it? It's easy. I went from HR, y'all know I went from HR to cyber in like 4 or 5 months. Okay, piece of cake. If you know how to take a test, you could be a cyber professional. All right. Now the last one he said, this actually isn't the last one. There's one out here, but this was so interesting, y'all, and I loved it. Now this wasn't the hacker. This was the guy interviewing him, the hated one. Okay, the hated one came out with this and said, when he does training, he doesn't talk about vulnerabilities. Okay, he stopped doing that. And y'all know I love that. The second that came out of his mouth, like I was all ears. I was like, tell me more. He said, you stop talking about vulnerabilities and weaknesses and, boogeymen and, you're going to get hacked. People ain't trying to hear that. People don't care. They don't care, so shut up about it. Okay. What he talks about, he said, is abuse. People care about that. And he mentioned privacy. And don't you care if somebody gets your information, and does something with it, whether it's getting into your bank account, whether it's abusing you? He talks about domestic abuse. Okay, y'all remember a couple months ago, I did the video on IoT being used in domestic abuse. People care about that. If I tell you, listen, that dude or that chick you with ain't no good, all right? So let me tell you right now, all these smart devices you getting for your birthday and Christmas and all that, those things can be used to help them abuse you. You understand? Those things can be used to help them track what you're doing on the computer, to help them monitor what you're doing in the house when they're not there. People will listen to that, okay? They ain't trying to hear about no vulnerabilities. Nobody cares about that. What they do care about is them being abused with their own stuff, their own information. Okay, I don't want that to happen. Now I'm listening. And that's why he said, this is what he talks about now. He don't mention no vulnerabilities and weaknesses and all that, okay? He talks about domestic abuse, government abuse, being abused by other agencies, using your information to abuse you. Cyberbullying, child abuse, mistaken identity. It's still talking about vulnerabilities, but from a different perspective, from a perspective that people actually care about, okay? From a perspective that people care about. Now, the last thing he talked about or the last thing I wrote down, not the last thing he talked about, which was interesting to me because I have not. He talked about how Snowden, what is his, what did he say? He didn't say idol. I forgot what he said, but it was something like that. Like he's inspired him or something. Now I don't know the whole story of Snowden. Okay. I've been told to watch the documentary or the movie I guess they made or something, but I just haven't gotten around to doing that. But I will. But he said, you know, Snowden inspires him, and this is the hated one who said this. Okay, not necessarily the hacker, because he said, you know, he found that there was something that was right to do, and he did it, and he like slept like a baby after he did it. You know, which is why he has his channel, you know, and he does the things that he does. And I guess what he says, you know, in a lot of circles is unpopular, which is probably why his channel is called the hated one. But I, you know, I admired that, you know, him saying that. Again, I don't know the story of Snowden. I got to go look at that. But, you know, so that was really good. So the interview is on the Hated Ones channel. I put the link so you guys can go look at the whole thing. It's called Interview with a Real Hacker. There is no making it secure. It was very interesting. If you have time, you know, it's a 3 hours and some change, but it was very interesting. And I really encourage you all to go and watch it. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. And I'll see you all back here sometime. Bye, y'all.